What's up YouTubers, Johnny DIY here. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to repair a loose, peeling, or bubbling tape joint in drywall. If you guys are new to my channel, please do me a favor and click the subscribe and the notification bell. That way you can get my new videos. Alright, let's get to this one. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and lay down some plastic or a drop cloth down below the area we're going to be working on so we don't make too big of a mess. Okay, so as you can see, we've got some paper tape peeling off, and this was most commonly because whoever installed this didn't thin the mud out. It was too dry, and then what happens is the paper tape pulls all the moisture out of the mud, or they didn't use enough mud, and it doesn't get a good bond between the wall and the tape. So as you can see, I can just peel that off very easily. It shouldn't come off like this. If you have a good bond, it should be a lot harder to come off. I'm just going to go ahead and peel off all these joints. I can just peel them up with my fingernail. That one might be good, but I may as well redo them all, so I'll just take my utility knife and peel that up. Yeah, look.
Now let me show you an area that you may have. See this area right here? The side's just bubbling. If you just have some of that tape that's bubbling on the side, what you can do is you take your utility knife and we'll just cut through the paper where it's peeling off. And if that bubble hasn't gone all the way to the middle of the joint, then you could just go ahead and mud and patch that, but this one's all loose too.
We'll go ahead and peel that off as well. So we've got one patch here, one patch there, one there, and one there. They had some plumbing done to this area. I'm just gonna go over and assess everything. Check these screws. If some of them aren't below the surface, that's gonna come to a problem, so just take your screwdriver. Give them a little bit of a turn that you can't feel them. They're a little below the surface. Well, that one's not hitting anything. That one missed the stud. There we go.
Okay, so now where that tape was that we pulled off, I'm going to take my utility knife, and if any of it's loose, just go ahead and pick it off or scrape it off. This looks pretty tight. It wasn't done very long ago. So now we're going to take some sandpaper. You can also use a sanding block around 180 grit or so. I'll make sure I put links down to all the specific tools that we're going to be using throughout the video for you guys down in the description box. But we'll go ahead and start sanding this and cleaning up this joint. Just going to give ourselves a nice little surface for our new compound to go on. Soften up those edges too. We really want these edges feathered in, so we want them thinner on the outside. I've got my little drywall pan. We're going to use a 6-inch drywall knife. Like I said, I'll put links down in the description to these tools. And what we're going to use is regular old all-purpose joint compound. I like these little tubs for small patches. If you're doing a ton of work, you can get them in the big boxes and bags. If you're in a hurry and you need these patches to be done in a day or two, you can get quick setting drywall compound. It comes in a powder and you just mix it with water, and that will set up really fast so you can keep doing your layers. And pro tip, if you put a little plastic wrap on the top of this while it's in storage, it'll keep the air from getting to it and it'll make it last a lot longer. Also, if you pour a little bleach on top, it'll keep it from getting any mold. Okay, now how it comes out of the bucket, it's actually going to be too thick for taping. So I've got my bucket of water. Gonna put a little water in here. And then we're just gonna mix it up. So it's nice and consistent and creamy. So see, we want it pretty thin for the taping process because of that moisture of the paper tape. We need it a little wetter so it doesn't pull it all out. Okay, so we're just going to be using regular old paper drywall tape. This comes pre-creased so you can go into corners and things. You want to put this creased pointed edge up against the wall, that way it doesn't poke that little crease outwards. And you can just go ahead and cut it with your drywall knife. Just rip it off. We're gonna go ahead and put a little bit of our thinned down mud all across that joint. Just a little wider than the tape. And then I like to just go ahead and dunk the paper right in my bucket of water just to get it a little bit wet so we don't run into that issue again. And we're just going to place it right over our mud that we just laid. Center the middle of the crease right over the line in the drywall. And this is really going to be the easiest way, just removing the old tape if it's really badly bubbled or peeling off. Like I said, if it's peeling on the edges, you can get away with just cutting it off. But then we're just going to take a little bit of mud, go over the top just a little bit. If we hold it while we pull the knife, we can pull some of that mud out from underneath. So we just want that tape firmly seated against the wall so you can use good pressure on your knife. After it's seated, we can go ahead and put a little mud on top. Just a super thin layer. Okay, and then it's just rinse and repeat. Now when you're lining up the pieces 90 degrees to each other, you don't need to overlap these pieces, just butt them up against each other. Okay, it's the next day. It's been drying. Now we can go ahead and take our knife. We can go ahead and scrape off any globs that we left over. And then basically we're going to take our mud and we're going to start extending the mud out further than the joints on both sides of it. We just want it to be thicker, and then we're gonna run it thinner as we get further away from the tape. And you can run your mud a little thicker today than when we're taping. So now basically once we've got that layer over our tape, we're going to take our knife and we're going to start feathering the edges on both sides of the tape. What that means is we're going to put more pressure on both sides of the tape and lighter in the middle, because we want to leave more of the mud in the middle to cover up the tape. So we go heavy, light in the middle, heavy. Heavy, light in the middle, heavy. Not going to probably be able to cover up the tape fully on this second pass, so don't worry about that. It usually takes 3 coats at least. And it doesn't have to be perfect. If you have lines from your knife, that's fine. We can sand those smooth tomorrow. Alright, that's good for today. We'll let this set up another day. Looks like it's going to need one more coat before we match the texture. Okay, it's been another day. Now it's time to do the third coat. And I'm going to be using a 12-inch knife this time. I could have used the 12-inch knife yesterday. You can also use a trowel style. Now this is the coat that we're going to want to fully cover the tape. We want that tape to disappear fully. This is going to be the last coat, hopefully, before our texture coat. Now if you have smooth walls, you won't be texturing, so you're going to want to make sure this third coat is nice and smooth for that to match. And you can go ahead and sand and feather those edges if they need to be. Mine didn't need it. Remember, you can always come back and sand if it's not perfect. Sanding really levels the playing field. If you're texturing on the next coat, you have a little more leeway. It doesn't have to be perfect, because that texture is going to hide. So you can bring those edges out a little further than the last coat. And if we don't have full coverage on this, don't worry, because you can always do a fourth coat.
I prefer to get it done in 3 coats because then, well, you're done. But it doesn't hurt. Sometimes I do 4 coats just to get it right. Gonna go ahead and connect these bottom lower patches. If you have big patches that are kind of close together, you may as well connect them. It'll make them a little less noticeable on the finish wall. Okay, now you're gonna wanna let these patches dry for another full day. I went ahead and let them dry a little bit, so now I can touch it with my bare hand. And if you feel where the tape is, run your hand across it, close your eyes. If you can feel any sort of bumps or humps when you run your hand across the wall, that means you either need to do some sanding and or add another layer of mud. But this feels really smooth. So I'll come back here tomorrow, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and sand all around the patch and really feather those edges in and make those thinner so it's nice and gradual all around all of our patches. If you have smooth finished walls, obviously you just wanna sand this nice and smooth to match the rest of your wall. This, as you can see, is a medium knockdown finish. So what I'm probably gonna end up doing is using some of this spray wall texture, but I think I'll do a separate video on that because it's kind of a whole nother thing. Okay, so here is the wall all textured and painted and finished. It came out pretty good. You really can't see anything. It is important that you go ahead and prime first with regular primer, then top coat. Even if you're using a paint and primer in one, you always want to use a separate primer on fresh drywall or patches. That's just going to help make it blend in better. And it's also going to give your paint a better adhesion. Can't see those patches at all. But alright guys, that's it for this one. Hopefully you found something in this video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe and click the notification bell so you can get all my new videos. Thanks for watching Johnny DIY. Keep on doing it yourself guys. Take care.